The wedding day disaster. The moment everything shattered. The white roses in my bouquet trembled in my shaking hands. I stood at the entrance of St. Mary's Cathedral, watching 300 guests turn to stare at me with expressions ranging from pity to shock. But I wasn't looking at them. My eyes were fixed on the altar where my fiancé Derek was supposed to be waiting. Instead, the space stood empty except for Father Michael, who shifted uncomfortably in his robes. Maybe he's just running late, my mother whispered beside me, though her voice carried no conviction. We both knew Derek had never been late for anything in his life. He was the type of man who set 3 alarms and arrived everywhere 15 minutes early. I took a hesitant step forward down that endless white carpet. Each step felt like walking through water. The classical music that should have filled me with joy now sounded like a funeral march. Halfway down the aisle, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Derek's best man, James, was nowhere to be seen either. And my best friend Mia, who was supposed to be my maid of honor, had also vanished. The text that changed everything. My phone buzzed in the small pocket of my wedding dress. I'd hidden it there against tradition, some instinct telling me I might need it. I pulled it out with trembling fingers and saw a message from an unknown number. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Check the bridal suite upstairs. A friend. My heart pounded, so hard I thought everyone in the cathedral could hear it. Without thinking, I turned and walked back up the aisle, ignoring my mother's confused calls and the whispers that erupted throughout the church. My white dress felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds as I climbed the stairs to the second floor where the bridal suites were located. The devastating discovery. The door to the groom's preparation room was slightly open. I could hear voices inside, low and intimate. My hand hesitated on the doorknob, some part of me desperately wishing I could turn back time, walk away, pretend I'd never received that text. But I pushed the door open. Derek stood there in his tuxedo, but he wasn't alone. Mia was in his arms, still wearing the lavender bridesmaid dress I'd chosen for her. They were kissing with the kind of passion that spoke of familiarity, of something that had been happening for far longer than just today. How long? My voice came out as barely a whisper, but they both jumped apart as if I'd screamed. Mia's face went pale beneath her perfectly applied makeup. Emma, I can explain. How long? I repeated, louder this time. My hands clenched the bouquet so tightly that thorns from the roses bit into my palms through my gloves. Derek at least had the decency to look ashamed. 6 months, he admitted quietly. Emma, I never meant for this to happen. We connected. The twisted truth unfolds. 6 months. The words echoed in my mind like a death sentence. 6 months ago was when Derek had proposed to me on that romantic beach vacation. 6 months ago was when I'd started planning this wedding, pouring my savings into making it perfect. 6 months ago was when Mia had hugged me and squealed with excitement, promising to help me with every detail. All those wedding planning sessions, I said slowly, pieces clicking together in my mind. When you two would stay late to help me decide on decorations or taste test the cake options. You were together then. Mia stepped forward, tears running down her face, but they looked fake to me now. Everything about her looked fake. Emma, you have to understand. Derek and I, we have a history. We dated in college before you even knew him. When we reconnected at your engagement party, all those old feelings came rushing back. So this is my fault. I laughed, but it was a broken sound. I brought you two together by falling in love with him. Nobody's saying it's your fault, Derek said, running his hand through his perfectly styled hair and messing it up. It's complicated, Emma. I do care about you. But Mia and I, we're meant to be together. I couldn't go through with the wedding knowing that. The public humiliation. Couldn't go through with it. My voice rose to a shout. There are 300 people downstairs, Derek. My entire family, our friends, your business partners. We spent $40,000 on this wedding. My parents took out a loan. I'll pay them back, Derek said quickly. I make good money at the firm. This doesn't have to be messy. I stared at him, this man I'd thought I'd spend my life with, and realized I'd never really known him at all. The Derek I'd fallen in love with 2 years ago at that coffee shop had been kind and thoughtful. He brought me flowers for no reason and listened when I talked about my dreams of opening my own art gallery. This man in front of me was a stranger wearing Derek's face. Get out, I said quietly. Both of you. Get out before I scream so loud that everyone downstairs hears exactly what kind of people you are. They didn't need to be told twice. Mia grabbed her purse and fled, her heels clicking rapidly on the hardwood floor. Derek paused at the door, opening his mouth as if to say something, then thought better of it and left. I stood alone in that room, surrounded by Derek's things, his cologne on the dresser, his phone charger, his carefully arranged groomsmen gifts. I wanted to destroy all of it, wanted to scream and cry and break things. Instead, I walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot just in time to see Derek and Mia get into his car and drive away. Facing the crowd, I had to go back downstairs, had to face all those people and tell them that the wedding they dressed up for, traveled for, some flying in from other states, wasn't going to happen. The walk down those stairs felt like descending into hell. When I appeared at the top of the main staircase, the murmur of confused conversation stopped. Everyone turned to look at me. I saw my mother's worried face, my father's concerned frown. I saw Derek's parents, who'd always treated me like a daughter. I saw my co-workers from the museum where I worked as a curator, all of them waiting for an explanation. "There's not going to be a wedding," I announced, my voice surprisingly steady. "Derek has decided he'd rather be with my maid of honor. I'm sorry you all came for nothing. There's a reception hall with food and music already paid for. You might as well enjoy it." The shocked silence lasted only a moment before erupting into chaos. Derek's mother gasped and sat down hard in a pew. My mother rushed up the stairs toward me. People started pulling out their phones, probably to text friends about the drama they'd just witnessed. I turned and walked back upstairs, unable to handle another moment of their pity and shock. I locked myself in the bridal suite and finally let myself cry. The unexpected encounter. An hour later, there was a soft knock on the door. "Emma, it's your mom. Can I come in?" I opened the door to find my mother standing there with a man I hadn't seen in 15 years. Lucas Wright, my first love from high school, the boy who'd moved away before our senior year and broken my teenage heart. "Lucas," I said, confused. "What are you doing here?" He looked different from the lanky teenager I remembered. Now he was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive suit that fit him perfectly. His dark hair was styled professionally, and there was a confidence in his posture that hadn't been there when we were 17. "I was invited," he said gently. "Your mother sent me an invitation months ago when she got my new address from my mom. I just flew in this morning from New York." My mother squeezed my hand. "Sweetheart, I'll give you 2 a moment. Come downstairs when you're ready. Your father and I will handle everything here." After she left, Lucas and I stood in awkward silence. I was suddenly aware of how I must look. Makeup ruined from crying, wedding dress wrinkled, hair falling out of its elaborate updo. "I heard what happened," Lucas said finally. "I was in the back of the church when you made your announcement." "Emma, I'm so sorry." "Why?" I laughed bitterly. "It's not your fault my fiancé decided he loved my best friend more than me. It's still a terrible thing to experience." He stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. "Derek's an idiot. The beginning of something new." We sat down on the couch where, just hours ago, my bridesmaids and I had been laughing and taking photos. Now it felt like a completely different lifetime. "What have you been doing for the past 15 years? I asked, needing to talk about anything other than my failed wedding. Lucas smiled slightly. "Building a company, mostly. I started a tech startup in Silicon Valley right after college. We developed software for medical records management. Last year, we sold to a larger company for a substantial amount." "So you're rich now?" The words came out more bluntly than I'd intended. "Comfortable," he corrected. "Very comfortable. Enough that I don't have to work unless I want to. But that's not important right now. What's important is that you're hurting, and I want to help." "Help how? Can you turn back time and keep me from wasting 2 years on a man who was lying to me?" "No," Lucas admitted. "But I can get you out of here. Away from all these people and their pity. Away from this church and everything it represents right now." I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since he'd arrived. There was something in his dark eyes that I recognized from high school, that intensity he'd always had when he looked at me, like I was the only person in the world who mattered. "Where would we go?" I asked. An offer I couldn't refuse. "I have a suite at the Grand Hotel downtown," Lucas said. "Top floor, amazing view. You could change out of that dress, order room service, watch terrible movies, and not have to see or talk to anyone you don't want to. I can even arrange for your things to be brought from your apartment. I can't just run away from this." "Why not?" Lucas challenged. "Your parents can handle the guests. The hall is paid for, so people can eat and drink and gossip about what happened. You don't owe anyone an explanation or your presence. What you need is to take care of yourself. The offer was tempting. So tempting. The thought of staying here, of having to accept condolences and answer questions and see the pity in everyone's eyes, made me feel sick. What about you? I asked. Don't you have somewhere else to be? Emma, I flew across the country for your wedding. My only plan for the next few days was to attend your celebration and then fly back. If you'll let me, I'd like to spend that time making sure you're okay instead. There was something in his voice, some old emotion I'd thought was long buried. When Lucas had moved away during our junior year of high school, I'd cried for weeks. We'd promised to stay in touch, but teenage promises are easily broken by distance and time. I'd eventually moved on, dated other people, and convinced myself that what we'd had was just a high school crush. But looking at him now, seeing the concern in his eyes and remembering how safe he'd always made me feel, I realized that maybe some feelings never really die. They just hibernate, waiting for the right moment to wake up. Okay, I said finally. Let's get out of here. The escape. Lucas helped me gather my things, my phone, my purse, the small bag I brought with clothes to change into for the honeymoon I was supposed to be leaving for tomorrow. We sneaked out through a side door of the church, avoiding the crowds of people still gathered in the main hall. His car was parked nearby, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than I made in a year. He opened the door for me, and I slid gratefully into the leather seat, finally able to kick off the uncomfortable heels that had been pinching my feet all day. As we drove away from the church, I looked back one last time at the building where my future was supposed to have begun. Instead, it had become the place where my old life ended. But maybe, I thought as Lucas reached over to squeeze my hand comfortingly, endings were just new beginnings in disguise. Thank you, I said softly as we merged into traffic. For what? For showing up today? For being here when everything fell apart? For giving me an escape? Lucas glanced at me with a small smile. Emma, I do a lot more than that for you. I always would have. Some things don't change, even after 15 years. And as we drove through the city streets toward whatever came next, I felt the first tiny spark of something that wasn't despair. It felt dangerously close to hope. Secrets and second chances. A new morning, a new perspective. I woke up to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, momentarily confused about where I was. Then it all came rushing back. The wedding that never happened, Derek's betrayal, Lucas's rescue. I sat up in the massive hotel bed, still wearing the clothes I'd changed into last night, and looked around the luxury suite that had become my temporary refuge. Lucas had been the perfect gentleman. He'd taken the couch in the sitting room while I got the bedroom. Last night, we'd ordered room service and watched old comedy movies until I finally fell asleep sometime around 3 in the morning. He hadn't pushed me to talk about Derek or Mia, hadn't offered empty platitudes about how everything would be fine. He'd just been there, a steady presence when my world was falling apart. There was a soft knock on the bedroom door. Emma? I ordered breakfast. Come out whenever you're ready. I found him in the sitting area, already showered and dressed in casual clothes, jeans, and a simple black sweater that somehow looked expensive. The breakfast spread on the table could have fed 6 people. Fresh pastries, fruit, eggs, bacon, pancakes, and a carafe of coffee that smelled like heaven. You didn't have to do all this, I said, sitting down and immediately reaching for the coffee. I wanted to, Lucas replied simply. Besides, I wasn't sure what you liked anymore. 15 years is a long time. People's tastes change. Catching up on lost time. As we ate, we began to really talk for the first time since his return. Lucas told me about his journey from the shy teenager I'd known to the successful businessman he'd become. After his family moved to California during high school, he'd thrown himself into computers and coding, desperate for something to distract him from missing his old life. And, he admitted with a small smile, missing me. I thought about reaching out so many times, he said, spreading jam on a croissant. But I figured you'd moved on. And then I saw your engagement announcement on social media about a year ago. That's when I knew I'd waited too long. You followed me on social media? I asked, surprised. I never stopped checking in on you, Emma. Even when I was building my company, even when I was dating other people. I always wondered what you were doing, if you were happy. He paused, his dark eyes meeting mine. Yesterday, when I saw you walk back down that aisle and heard what happened, Part of me was relieved. Is that terrible? Relieved that I was humiliated in front of 300 people. Relieved that you didn't marry someone who didn't deserve you. Lucas corrected gently. Derek threw away the best thing that could have happened to him. That's his loss, and, if I'm being honest, my gain. The unexpected phone calls. My phone started ringing before I could respond to Lucas's words. I looked at the screen and saw Derek's name. It was the 15th time he'd called since last night. I'd ignored all of them. You should probably talk to him eventually, Lucas said, noticing my expression. Get closure, at least. I have closure. He chose Mia. End of story. Is it though? Lucas leaned forward. Emma, I know this isn't what you want to hear, but you're going to have to deal with the practical stuff. You live together, right? You have shared accounts, belongings at each other's places. You can't just ghost him forever. He was right, of course. Derek and I had been living together for the past year in his apartment downtown. All my clothes, my books, my art supplies, everything was there. I couldn't just abandon it all, no matter how much I wanted to never see his face again. I'll call him later, I said, when I'm ready. But I didn't have to wait. 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the hotel suite door. Lucas answered it, and I heard Derek's voice in the hallway. I need to see Emma. Please, I know she's in there. The confrontation. Lucas looked back at me, silently asking permission. I nodded, steeling myself for what was coming. When Derek walked in, he looked terrible. His hair was messy, his eyes were bloodshot, and he was wearing the same clothes from yesterday, now wrinkled and disheveled. Emma, thank God, he said, moving toward me. But Lucas stepped between us, his body language protective. Stay where you are, Lucas said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. Derek finally seemed to notice who he was talking to. Lucas, right? What are you doing here? I'm here because Emma needs someone she can trust, Lucas replied. Something you clearly aren't. This is between me and my fiancé, Derek said angrily. Ex-fiancé. I corrected, standing up from the breakfast table. And Lucas can stay. Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of him. Derek's desperate plea. Derek's face crumpled. Emma, please. I made a terrible mistake. Mia and I, it was just confusion. Old feelings that got mixed up with the stress of the wedding. But I love you. I want to marry you. We can reschedule, make this right. I stared at him, trying to find any trace of the man I'd fallen in love with. You love me? You were kissing my best friend an hour before our wedding. You've been sneaking around with her for 6 months. That's not love, Derek. That's not even respect. People make mistakes. His voice rose desperately. You're not perfect either, Emma. Remember when you forgot our anniversary last year? Or when you were too busy with your museum work to come to my company's Christmas party? So this is my fault. I felt anger rising hot in my chest. I forgot one anniversary and missed one party. So you decided to have an affair with my best friend? Lucas moved closer to me, and I felt his presence like a shield. Derek noticed, and his expression turned ugly. I see what's happening here, he said, his voice dripping with venom. You found yourself a backup plan pretty quickly. Did you even wait 24 hours before jumping into bed with him? The truth comes out. Watch yourself, Lucas warned, his voice dangerously quiet. But Derek was past caring. No wonder you're not more upset about the wedding. You probably planned this. You and Lucas probably reconnected before yesterday and... Stop, I said firmly. I haven't done anything wrong here, Derek. You're the one who cheated. You're the one who destroyed our relationship. And you know what the worst part is? You're not even sorry. You're just scared. Scared? Of what? Of being alone. Of looking like the bad guy. Of having to explain to everyone why you threw away a perfectly good relationship. I walked closer to him, and for the first time, he backed up a step. But mostly, you're scared because you realize what you've lost. Not me specifically. You're scared because you wanted to have your cake and eat it too, and now you have nothing. Derek's phone rang, and he pulled it out. I saw Mia's name flash on the screen. He declined the call, but not before I noticed he'd received dozens of messages from her. She's calling you a lot, I observed. Trouble in paradise already? It's not like that, Derek said, but he looked uncomfortable. She's just emotional about everything that happened. The financial bombshell. Speaking of everything that happened, I said, suddenly remembering something important. We need to talk about money. The wedding cost $40,000. My parents took out a loan for their portion. Who's paying them back? Derek's face went pale. About that. Emma, I need to ask you something. Did you move any money out of our joint account recently? What? No. Why would I? Because it's empty, Derek said quietly. There was $30,000 in there last week. Now there's less than 1,000. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. That joint account was supposed to be our emergency fund, our future. I'd contributed to it from every paycheck, saving carefully for the life we were supposed to build together. Where did it go? I demanded. Derek wouldn't meet my eyes. I used it for some investments. They were supposed to pay off before the wedding, but they fell through. Investments? What kind of investments? Lucas asked, suddenly very interested. That's none of your business, Derek snapped. But Lucas pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Hey James, it's Lucas, right? Yeah, I need you to look into someone for me. Derek Patterson works at Morrison & Associates law firm. I want to know about any business dealings he's been involved with in the last 6 months. He paused, listening. Great. Send me everything you find. Thanks. Derek's face had gone from pale to gray. You can't do that. That's private information. Actually, as someone with access to extensive business databases, I can absolutely do that, Lucas said calmly. Especially if it involves financial fraud, which I'm starting to suspect it does. Mia's arrival. Before Derek could respond, there was another knock at the door. This time it was Mia, looking equally disheveled and desperate. Her eyes were red from crying, and her voice shook when she spoke. Emma, please, we need to talk. Both of us. Derek and I. I think I've heard enough from both of you, I said coldly. No, you don't understand, Mia said, pushing past Derek into the room. Derek told me you two were already breaking up. He said the wedding was just for show, that you'd both decided to go through with it for your families, but that you were going to quietly separate afterward. He said you didn't love him anymore. I looked at Derek, who couldn't seem to meet anyone's eyes. Is that what you told her? It was more complicated than that, he stammered. He lied to me, Mia said, tears streaming down her face. He lied to both of us. And now I've lost my best friend and ruined my reputation. And for what? For a man who's been playing games with both of us. The web of lies unravels. Lucas's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his expression darkened. Emma, you need to see this. He showed me his phone, where his assistant had sent through several documents. As I read through them, I felt my anger transform into something cold and calculating. Derek hadn't just spent our joint account money on investments. He'd used it as collateral for a loan to fund a business venture with James, his best man. A venture that had failed spectacularly, leaving him in debt to some very serious people. The wedding, I realized, wasn't just about love. It was about merging our finances, getting access to my family's connections and resources, using our marriage to help dig himself out of the hole he'd created. You were using me, I said quietly. The whole time. The romance, the proposal, the wedding plans. It was all just a way to solve your money problems. No, Derek protested. I did love you, Emma. I do love you. But yes, okay, I was in trouble. I made some bad decisions. I thought if we got married, if we combined everything, I could fix it. Is that so wrong? Lots of marriages are partnerships, financial arrangements. Marriages should be honest arrangements, Lucas said sharply. You lied to her about everything. The phone call that changed everything. Mia had collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. He told me we'd be together, that we'd run away and start over. He said he had money saved up, that we could travel, maybe move to Europe. With what money? I asked bitterly. He spent hours, and from what I'm reading here, he's about to lose his job. The law firm just found out about his unauthorized borrowing from the client trust fund. Derek's phone rang again. This time, when he looked at it, all the color drained from his face. I have to take this, he said, and stepped out into the hallway. Through the door, we could hear his side of the conversation. It wasn't good. Someone was demanding money he owed them, threatening legal action if he didn't pay within 48 hours. When he came back in, he looked like a broken man. Emma, please. I'm begging you. If you don't press charges, if you let me explain to your parents, maybe we can work something out. I'll pay back every cent, I swear. Just don't destroy me. A surprising revelation. Why would I press charges? I asked, confused. Lucas looked up from his phone again. Because according to this, Derek forged your signature on several loan documents, using your credit and your family's business as collateral. That's fraud, Emma. That's a felony. The room went silent. Even Mia stopped crying, staring at Derek in horror. You said those papers were for our apartment lease, I whispered, remembering the stack of documents Derek had asked me to sign a few months ago. You said we needed to renew. I was desperate, Derek said, and now he was crying. These people, Emma, they're not the kind you can just ignore. I needed the money. I thought I could pay it back before you ever found out. I looked at this man who I'd almost married, who I'd trusted with my heart and my future, and felt nothing but disgust. Get out, I said quietly. Both of you. Get out before I call the police right now. The aftermath. After they left, I sat on the couch and tried to process everything that had just happened. In less than 24 hours, my entire understanding of my life had been shattered and rebuilt. Derek wasn't just a cheater. He was a criminal who'd been using me. Mia wasn't my friend. She was someone who'd believed lies without ever checking with me. Are you okay? Lucas asked, sitting beside me. I don't know, I admitted. I feel like I should be more upset. Like I should be crying or screaming or something. But mostly I just feel relieved. Relieved that I found out now instead of after we were married. That I didn't legally tie myself to someone who could ruin my life. I looked at Lucas. Thank you. For being here. For finding out the truth. I could have spent years trying to dig myself out of Derek's mess if we'd actually gotten married. Lucas reached over and took my hand. I told you yesterday, I'd do a lot more than that for you. An unexpected proposition. Emma, I need to tell you something, Lucas said, his thumb absently stroking the back of my hand. When I saw your engagement announcement last year, I almost flew here to stop it. I convinced myself I was being crazy, that you were happy, and I had no right to interfere. But I never stopped thinking about you. Never stopped wondering what would have happened if my family hadn't moved away, if we'd had the chance to see where our relationship could go. Lucas, let me finish, he said gently. I'm not saying this to pressure you or to take advantage of a vulnerable moment. I'm saying it because life is short and I've wasted 15 years not telling you how I feel. I'm still in love with you, Emma. I probably never stopped. My heart was pounding. We barely know each other anymore. We're not 17 anymore. Then let's get to know each other again, Lucas said. I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm asking if you'll let me take you to dinner. Let me remind you why we fell in love in the first place. Let's see if what we had was just a teenage crush or if it was something real that deserves a second chance. I thought about Derek, about how I'd rushed into a relationship with someone who seemed perfect on the surface but was rotten underneath. I thought about all the warning signs I'd ignored, all the times I'd made excuses for behavior that should have sent me running. But when I looked at Lucas, I didn't see any red flags. I saw someone who'd crossed the country for my wedding, who'd given me a place to stay without expecting anything in return, who'd protected me and helped me uncover the truth about the man I'd almost married. Okay, I said finally. Let's have dinner. Let's see what happens. The plan takes shape. Lucas's smile was bright enough to light up the entire room. There's something else, he said. I did some more digging into Derek's business dealings. He owes money to a lot of people, including some clients of mine. Your clients. I'm on the board of several companies now. It's what I do with my time since selling my startup. One of those companies is Morrison & Associates' biggest client. He paused, letting that sink in. Derek's about to lose his job, Emma. And when he does, all his debts become immediately due. He'll lose everything. Good, I said, surprised by the venom in my own voice. But what if there was a way to make sure he faced real consequences? Not just losing his job, but actually paying back everyone he hurt. Lucas pulled up another file on his phone. I have enough evidence here to bury him legally. But I wanted to ask you first, how far do you want to take this? I thought about my parents' loan, about the money Derek had stolen from our joint account, about the fraud he'd committed in my name. I thought about Mia and all the other lies he'd probably told. I want justice, I said firmly. I want everyone to know what he did. And I want him to face the consequences of his actions. Lucas nodded slowly. Then we'll make sure he does. Together. As we sat there making plans, I realized that this was the beginning of something. Not just revenge against Derek, but the start of a new chapter in my life. One where I wasn't a victim being used and discarded, but a woman taking control of her own story. And if Lucas wanted to be part of that story, well, I was starting to think that might be exactly what I needed. Sweet revenge and new beginnings. 3 weeks later, the transformation. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my new apartment, barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of change. Lucas had helped me find this beautiful loft in the Arts District, close to the museum where I worked, filled with natural light and completely mine. No shared spaces, no walking on eggshells, no Derek. Tonight was the annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala, the biggest social event of the season. It was also where Derek's world would come crashing down, though he didn't know it yet. Lucas had orchestrated everything perfectly, and I'd spent the last 3 weeks preparing for this moment. The woman in the mirror wore a stunning emerald green gown that hugged every curve. My hair, which I'd always worn long because Derek preferred it that way, was now cut in a sleek bob that framed my face. I'd lost the tired, stressed look that had haunted my features for the past year. I looked confident, powerful, alive. "You look absolutely stunning," Lucas said from the doorway, and I turned to see him in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. My breath caught. He'd always been handsome, but success and maturity had transformed him into something breathtaking. "You clean up pretty well yourself," I said with a smile. He crossed the room and gently took my hands. "Are you ready for tonight? Once we do this, there's no going back." The plan explained. Over the past 3 weeks, Lucas and I had carefully built our case against Derek. We'd gathered evidence of his fraud, his theft from the client trust fund, his forged documents. But more than that, we discovered he wasn't just in debt to loan sharks and criminal elements. He'd also stolen from the Children's Hospital Charity Fund he was supposed to be managing for his law firm. Tonight's gala was where the law firm would announce their annual donation to the hospital. Derek had been counting on using that announcement to buy himself more time, to make himself look good while he figured a way out of his mess. What he didn't know was that the firm's senior partners had already been informed about his theft, and they were ready to make a very different kind of announcement. "I'm ready," I told Lucas. "Derek destroyed my life without a second thought. It's time he faced the consequences." "Just remember," Lucas said softly, cupping my face with his hand, "this isn't about revenge. This is about justice. About making sure he can't hurt anyone else the way he hurt you." I leaned into his touch, still amazed by how natural it felt to be with him. Over the past 3 weeks, we'd gone on dates, talked for hours, rediscovered the connection we'd had as teenagers, and found it had only grown stronger with time. Lucas never pushed, never rushed me, just let whatever was growing between us develop naturally. "When this is over," I said, "can we just be normal for a while? No drama. No revenge plots, just you and me?" Lucas smiled and pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead. "That sounds perfect." The gala begins. The ballroom of the Grand Hotel was transformed into a glittering wonderland. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow lights across the room, and hundreds of guests in formal were mingled with champagne glasses in hand. This was high society at its finest. Wealthy donors, prominent business people, city officials, and media representatives all gathered to celebrate charity and, let's be honest, see and be seen. Lucas and I made our entrance together, and I felt heads turn. I'd been to events like this before as Derek's +1, usually feeling out of place and underdressed. Tonight, walking in on Lucas Wright's arm, I felt like I belonged. More than that, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. "Emma." I heard a familiar voice and turned to see my former colleague from the museum, Jennifer. "Oh my God, you look amazing. I heard about what happened with the wedding. Are you okay?" "I'm better than okay," I said honestly. "Jennifer, this is Lucas Wright." "Lucas." Jennifer works in the contemporary art wing at the museum. As we chatted, I noticed Derek across the room. He was with Mia, both of them looking uncomfortable in their formal wear. Derek's tuxedo looked rented and slightly too large, while Mia's dress was pretty but clearly off the rack. They were trying to blend in with the wealthy crowd, but they stood out like sore thumbs.